Cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is one of my favorite topics, so it's really, they're all sort of part of my favorite topic, but this one especially is really like close to my heart. So it's really nice to be here practicing today together. So I thought I'd just spend a moment kind of reflecting on the sort of journey that I've taught with these different sessions. So last week we did metaphor and myth, and that was kind of talking about conceiving of emptiness as a kind of fullness where everything is so full and rich and multidimensional and deep that you can never get to the bottom of it because it just endlessly goes and goes and goes. Before that, we did Eros, and that was about, coming out of the kind of mind's fixed sort of like ways of looking and desire to grasp and just kind of letting yourself fall in love with experience and really, feel the pull of what's inspiring to you. And the first one was Somatic-imaginal, and that was about noticing how your experience, your embodied direct experience is already imaginal. It's not something that you need to layer on. It's just kind of like tuning into the way in which the experience of the body, the emotions, the vibes, that's all already kind of has this imaginal quality to it. And then today we're going to talk about mysticism. So to me, this is a lot about being with, almost like being with the core of experience with no distance between you and it. There's a way that when we can drop into a kind of like deep silence, like a deep inner silence and a silence with the outer world, and just like really find a sense of like depth and directness in our being. It's almost like experience starts just communicating with itself and being a kind of just like an expression and a flow of the nature of being, however you want to kind of conceive of that. So often mysticism is understood as a sort of divine connection, or it could be a sort of true nature connection. And when we sort of use those other aspects of the imaginal, it's like the sense of, metaphor and myth, that it's something that can be conceptualized and understood and described in many different ways, and all of those are welcome. All of those are kind of part of its expression. But the sort of like soul level direct experience of it is what we're feeding into today, rather than the sort of ideas of how we describe it. So it's really important that mysticism is found in direct experience. So it's never going to be found in a book or a concept or an idea. It's like you, as the universe, experiencing the universe right now. That's where you're going to find your mystical experience. And there's like plenty of kind of practices that we can do and that can reveal new parts of experience and show deeper layers, or like broader, more transcendental perspectives, or kind of like open people to all these different aspects of experience. And the practices are super important, because the more practice you've done, the more kind of like sensitivity and refinement that you can feel your direct experience with, the more clear that connection is going to be. But none of them create the connection. The connection's already there. Your sort of like innate mystical connection is already inside you right now. And you don't need to like layer something special on. It's really about like listening, sensitizing, feeling and finding the way that your connection is already there. So it's maybe worth feeling into the sense of that even right now, while we're sat here together, the sense of you're exactly who you're meant to be in this moment. So everything that is present for you, all of the emotions, all of your knowledge, all of your spiritual practice, everything you've done, like right now, it's not possible from a mystical perspective, it's not possible to be something different to who you're meant to be in this moment. And just kind of like letting that be present as part of your presence today. And then, yeah, putting on the kind of like lens or practice or desire for that mysticism. It's like getting in touch with the true expression of your deepest nature and kind of like bringing that in alignment with the broader whole, so the universe or the divine nature or Buddha nature or this kind of like bigger collective experience that we're all in. That's happening. And then there's something inside you that's happening. And it's like the deep truths of what those are, the deepest natures, just kind of tuning into both of those and feeling them sort of come into alignment together. So we're going to be doing some practices around things that will help us kind of, just tune into that gently and feel into what that feels like. We're going to do a couple of relational things, but they're all going to be in silence today. So allowing that sense of silence of kind of like the mystical that needs, that sort of like delicate sensitivity to have space to sort of start emerging. It's almost like, as I describe it now, it's like the image I get is a bit like a little bird or a shy cat or something. It's like it needs a bit of just like a safe space to start kind of like coming out and for you to be able to like come into a relationship with it. So we're going to stay in silence today, but do some relational practices and then do a guided meditation and then some Q&A at the end. Mysticism, it's on my whole kind of like framework of that I teach from. It's the last one that you get to, whichever, there's different directions that you can go. But the mysticism one is kind of like the last, it's almost like the cherry on the cake or something, or the final like individuation on the experience. It's not that it has to come last. Like my perspective is that everyone's got an innate mysticism in there. Like kids are super often in touch with this and just feel it and run around and kind of in a sort of playful way. But the reason that it's kind of last is that it's almost like it's the most subtle, it's the most refined one. And when you have the foundation of like good mindfulness, good spaciousness, good wholeheartedness, capacity to be authentic, you've done some shadow work, all of these things, it's like it's less likely to get co-opted into something that's like has shadows in it or pulls you away from experience. And because it pulls you into like ideas of what mysticism needs to be, it's more likely to be that kind of like really refined, direct experience. So it's almost like the more of the other practices that you've integrated, the kind of deeper and fuller this part of experience can be. So we're going to do a short exercise in pairs. And this is really feeling into the part of mysticism where listening is a really important part of it. And it's it's almost like often we live in quite a fast culture often with a lot of like ping-ponging back and forth and ideas and talking and expression and the opportunity to really like slow down and actually listen to the depths of yourself and the depths of experience isn't sort of included that much. So we just want to make some space for that. And it's almost like coming from a frame of that sort of in between us and through all of us and as all of our expression is this like cosmic Buddha nature energetic sort of thing that is emerging, that's kind of mysterious. It's like here we all are, the Big Bang happened probably, and then a bunch of stuff happened, and like we've popped out with all this intelligence and kind of capacity to be here, and we're all a part of that. And just finding the way to listen to the sense of like what is that collective emergence thing, and what is it in you, and what is it out there, and just kind of like tune in and be like, whoa, cool, okay. And listen to the wholeness of what is present. So that perspective kind of affords a way in which everything is welcome. So all feelings, all thoughts, everything that you're kind of bringing in, it can't be separate from the thing. It's all part of the whole. So just really bringing in that sense of wholeness. So we're going to go into pairs, and we're just going to do a simple exercise where one person is just going to sit and be present, and neither kind of like transmit nor just like they can just chill essentially. And then the other person is going to take a bit of time. We'll just do like maybe 2 minutes each or something. The other person is going to take a bit of time. You're just going to see if you can do, if it feels comfortable, do you look into each other's eyes? If that feels too intense, then you can, look wherever feels comfortable, and see if you can sort of flip between the difference of looking at something. So almost the sense of, like you're looking out, I can see a stool, I can see a red sign, I can see a thing. And then flip between that kind of like looking and receiving. So it's almost like the energetic feeling is the looking is I'm kind of like going out and looking around the room. The receiving is I'm sort of like sitting back, kind of leaning back into myself and just kind of like taking in what's coming from the other person. And also in my own experience, rather than sort of like the activity happening up here, which is where the looking feels, the receiving is kind of like I'm almost like letting things come to me, and I'm also letting things kind of like happen inside, and I'm like receiving my being. So maybe I'll do a little example. I'll do it with you, Sam, if that's okay. It's almost like if I come out of looking and go into receiving, I just sort of like get a sense of Sam's presence a bit more. There's kind of like there's a stronger connection inside me. That's like it's like a bit of recognition, safety, things like that. And it's kind of the things that come up can be whatever comes up inside you, but it's almost like feeling your response and feeling the other person's vibe. So if you can find a partner, and then I will guide that through. Yeah, do you want to? Oh, do you know one? Okay. Yeah, you said that. Yeah. Yeah. So choose who's going to go between looking and receiving first. And then, yeah, we'll do it for 2 minutes and then I'll ring the bell and you can swap. And in that time, you can sort of, yeah, just be playful with it, kind of see if you can like go between the two modes a bit and notice the difference as you do it. Yeah, cool. Nice. And if you're at home, you can either do it, you could go and pause and go and find a mirror and do it with yourself, so it works just as well in the mirror, or you could do it with objects in the room. So notice things that you look at and see the difference between looking and receiving. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so hopefully that was interesting. And I think also as the person, there's like just being able to notice the feelings as well as the person like being looked at or received, being the person looking and receiving, just the whole kind of sense of, that whole experience. It feels like being able to be present with that is in some ways kind of like core to the mystical experience where, there's some sense of like relationship and connection between these like very deep parts. So we're going to do another short one, which I'm just going to say some words out, and you can either close your eyes or have your eyes open, but just kind of like, again, drop into the depths of your experience, just like a really, almost like your most sensitive part or something. And I'm just going to say some words like very slowly and just see what happens when you receive them in your being. You. Apple. Blue. Mysticism. Tomorrow. Intelligence. Dharma. Sacred. For the benefit of all beings. So you can open your eyes again. And one of the things with that is that it's really trying to land in the experience that it's you now and how you're receiving things and the sort of fullness of that the intelligence is kind of already here. It's in your senses, it's in your experience. And it's not some like special thing that you get. It's the experience of just receiving and really letting that in, letting experience in, all of experience. And so one of the things that can help sort of like feel this is that the kind of information and the sort of like senses that you experience, it doesn't necessarily have to be as linear as normal reality. So it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of like logical and this and this and this and this. It can be like, one of the words like blue. It can be like, oh yeah, blue, like my genes, the ocean, sadness, beauty. It's just sort of like a kind of more just sort of everything is present, associative sense of like trusting your just natural response to things. And it's almost like, the image I get is kind of like everyone's sort of immersed in this energetic, embodied reality of experience that is innately mystical. And it's just kind of like, opening up the senses and like feeling that a bit more and like feeling the sense of what is present and being able to kind of tune in to that. So we're going to do another exercise. We're going to do a silent walking meditation. And as you walk, I'm just going to guide through some different places to put attention and to listen to. And we'll kind of like feel into some of those layers of what's present in your embodied experience at the moment. So you can stand up. And if you're watching this at home, I would recommend doing it as a walking, but it can also be done sitting if you want, or lying. So we're just going to walk slowly around the room, and you can, as you walk, you can sort of like come into contact with things. So as you're, you can get the sense of like, there can be a sense of, looking, receiving different objects, sort of different people. You don't want to be kind of like super invading people's space, but if there's a sense of, you're walking past someone and there's a little moment of connection, that can be part of it. And go at a nice slow pace, just to kind of like keep that sense of like deep silence that allows you to tune into the depths. And the first one we're going to do, you're going to try and keep your attention and experience inside. So inside your being and body, or, your energetic experience might expand a bit outside of the physical limits of your body, but that sense of like really being in kind of your emotional world, your body, and just notice what that experience is as you walk around. So you can start walking slowly. And if you want, like something to look for on the inside, you could look for kind of like what energy is present in your being. What's the sort of vibe you feel as you walk around? Also noticing any emotions that are present. And just remembering that sense of wholeness, that you're exactly who you're meant to be. So, if it's like boredom, or you're annoyed, or might be, like calm, peace, beauty, curiosity, whatever's present, it's all welcome. And noticing if your energy shifts as you move, as you see new things, or have got up and stood up and moved things around a bit. What's changed? What energies inside you? And then we're going to transition. So we're going to keep walking, but you're going to place your attention outside of you, somewhere sort of like 1 to 2 meters outside of you, roughly. Or maybe sort of as big as the room maximum. Kind of like from, half a meter to a meter away from you to the edge of the room. And just noticing how that feels different as you walk. You might be more sensitized to the other beings around, or the things, the objects. And just that sense you can stay in that receiving mode. No one needs anything from you. You don't need to be anything. You can just be sort of, receiving, vibing. And the next one that we do is going to be feeling into your imagination of the things that are outside of the room and the direct experience. So as you walk, it's almost like sensing, what's the landscape? What's the kind of conceptual, energetic belief landscape that you move through the world in? So if I say imagine all the things that are present for you that aren't currently directly in experience in the room, do you imagine people? Do you imagine like societal constructs of kind of like, what the world is and who you are in that world? Do you imagine a timeline of this morning, this afternoon, yesterday, tomorrow? Do you imagine kind of like more physical stuff that you don't currently sense right here in this room, but that just goes on and on into the sides of the world? What kind of things like live on in your imaginary that can't be directly sensed through the five senses right now, but still have a presence in your being? And notice the difference of how your experience feels when you're tuned into this compared to your insides or compared to the room. And then finally, the last one we're going to do, you're going to see if you can tune into something or tune into the feeling of the things that are beyond what you can imagine. Almost like ways of being, ways of understanding, things about the world that are just completely outside of any possible frame that you could begin to start thinking about. Just notice how that feels being in that. noticing if you kind of start looking for, like a new way of holding that is create something that you can imagine, and then see if you can go even beyond that again. And when you're ready, you can slowly find your way back. And just remembering these different places where your attention can be, and staying where feels comfortable, so you can stay out in the beyonds, or maybe like grounding down into the body might feel helpful. Feeling feet on the floor, that sort of thing. Whatever feels good. Yeah, so that exercise was just a sense of kind of feeling how, the different places to which we listen will kind of shape what we hear. And having, to me, mysticism is that full spectrum. It's like the depths of the inside of the being. It's like the world that we're in is part of it. It's your whole kind of imaginal experience, and then it's also beyond what you can imagine. And so having that sense of that full spectrum of being then creates more space for that mystical experience to, be present. And I think particularly the last one is one that is not often included in a way of being. It's like explicitly making space for the thing that is outside of your usual frame for what reality is, in a way that's kind of like one of the most important keys for mysticism, because there's a humility of not knowing, and openness and receptiveness to something that is new and bigger than you and mysterious, and can kind of like change your experience. So it's really important to include that one. And the way I sort of almost relate to mysticism and that sense of this sort of experience coming through, which is a connection to the divine nature or the true nature, or however you relate to it, is that a really kind of like healthy, grounded way to relate to it is it's almost like the universe is writing you little poems. So you can get these sorts of like intuitions or insights, or like deep feelings of interconnectedness, oneness, all sorts of sort of like strange kind of like powers and intuitive kind of stuff can open up. And the way that's like just really nice to hold that is the sense of the universe telling you a poem, because then it has that space between it to be creative and imaginal, rather than just like a thing that is grasped as like, oh, I got this intuition that XYZ, which means that I have to do this. And that can get a bit sort of like graspy and ungrounded. And so just being in that sense of receiving and listening and having the kind of like creative connection with the universe keeps it, it keeps it grounded. And In the lead up to teaching this, I spoke to a few people and kind of like asked them what their experience was of the mystical. And one of the things that came through that just felt so lovely and so like, beautifully kind of at the core of what it is in a way is it feels a bit like having a companion. It's almost like experience has a companion to itself where, it's like you and the universe, and there's some element of kind of like care and buddies, or like a sense of just being in experience together, and sort of you're expressing some things and you're receiving some things, and it like moving between that relationship and the sense of kind of like the heart state, so friendliness and compassion and joy, and those ways of connection feel very important as part of the mystical experience. And that sense of the universe kind of experiencing itself, it then almost like just naturally brings in a sense of purpose or connecting to something that's bigger than you, because this thing is happening and here we all are, hanging out, receiving, experiencing it. And then the purpose doesn't need to be some big kind of huge grandiose mystical thing. It's almost like just the purpose of being and experiencing and being present can come in as part of that sense of what experience is. And so, all of the kind of exercises that we've done today, a lot of it's been about the creating an intimacy with what is deeply present already. So sort of like coming from that kind of fundamental depth of being, just this sort of primordial, energetic, intelligent soup thing that everyone is emerging from in every moment. It's almost like just finding that sense of intimacy of how that is manifesting in your experience. And when we create like more spaciousness, more openness, more receptivity, more allowance for what that is, it's almost like creating the potential of emptiness where there's a sort of like open space for the universe to kind of play its symphony through you and through your sort of like receptive experience of it. So one sort of like final thing I'd like to share before we do the guided meditation is that mysticism is not something that you can like rush or hack. It's almost like the whole thing is going through its process, and everyone kind of like has to go on their journey and through their energetic process of practicing, of opening, of being, and in a way that is the mystical experience, going through the process of that experience. And so we're not looking for ways to like hack that or make it any different. It's almost like more a kind of honoring of that process, an orientation towards the meaning and the purpose of it, a like valuing of the beauty of the depths of experience, and just making space for the whole thing to follow its journey, and kind of trusting finding trust, faith, that sense of companionship that really can give you the sort of like courage and the felt sense of meaning that it's worthwhile to be present and like feel things deeply and give yourself and connect to something that is bigger than you, rather than this kind of like, more sort of self-centered kind of, I need to protect myself and like look out for myself and get all these things and do and plan and do all these things. It's more just like a really kind of like open, receptive flow with life, and trusting that is meaningful, purposeful, and that in some way kind of life takes care. So I'm going to do a guided meditation, and one of the important things for me about mysticism is this kind of like divine emptiness where there's space for different conceptions of what the mystical thing that's underneath is. So I'm going to use the terms Buddha nature because it resonates with me. But you can sort of, whatever that looks like for you, Christ consciousness or something completely ineffable, mysterious that can't have words put to it. The divine nature of experience, like whatever your kind of, you naturally sort of, make sense of this kind of explosion of life that is like present here and present in the room and in everything we imagine and beyond what anyone can possibly imagine. Whatever you kind of like, however you hold that, just like tune into that. So when I say Buddha nature, that's what I mean. And you can relate to that however feels good for you. And maybe even noticing kind of like, what does feel meaningful to you? Like, how do I conceive of that? Because I think that's part of the companionship, is the sense of finding your own resonance with what that thing is, finding your own kind of like language, your own sense of like, these words or this imagery or this thing actually kind of like really helps me connect to this mystical experience. And for each person, that will be subtly different. So it's, about your embodied experience, your kind of heart resonance, and your sort of, full expression in the world, your sort of full, what moves you, what's alchemical to your being. So you can kind of feel into that as we go through the guidance as well. So we can start by just doing some nice, slow, deep breaths. Breathing into the belly so that the belly expands. And breathing out through the nose. And we can just consciously invite in that sense of companionship. And if you have, a practice that feels most supportive to you, so maybe something like a light jhana practice or a heart practice, or somewhere where it feels really just the most resourcing for you to sort of put your attention. Could be prayer or gratitude, anywhere that sort of feels, a kind of home base of safety, connection. And just noticing that sense of when you go somewhere that feels resourcing. Yeah, the feeling of like companionship or connection with experience itself. It's almost like, even if it's just a tiny, whether it's a tiny glimpse of something that's like, oh, that feels good, or it's like a whole body, like, oh, this feels so nice. Sense of like experience kind of, experiencing itself in a way that has a bit of, like magic and beauty and other things in it. And staying in touch with that very sensitive, receiving part of you. And including, the full range of experience from what is deeply personal and in just inside the depths of your experience. The shared experience of sitting as a human being in this room together with other beings. Your whole kind of like imaginal societal world that lives, all the things that live outside of this room, and all of the things beyond what you can possibly imagine. And staying in touch with that really sensitive, receptive part, we're just going to invite in your Buddha nature. And so, your Buddha nature is the part of you that knows this deep mystical connection. could have some sense of an imaginal aspect where you can like feel, a Buddha or a completely different imaginal or real religious or other figure. Or it could just be something that's present in your experience that you can feel, some kind of, like subtle vibe that you feel inside of yourself. But just feeling that sense of yourself as a mystic, as an innately mystical being. And then we're going to invite in some different time scales. So I want you to imagine you 5 years ago. And just make some kind of connection to that in your being. However that arises, either as an image or just, a felt sense of, oh yeah, me 5 years ago. And you're going to see the Buddha nature of yourself 5 years ago. And you're just going to send anything back to that version of you that you think that they might need. So, compassion or love or forgiveness, kindness. While also recognizing that they're exactly who they're meant to be in that moment. And then you're going to imagine yourself 5 years in the future. Again, however that comes, so either an image or just a felt sense of that connection. And once again, we're just going to recognize the Buddha nature of the version of you that is 5 years in the future. And this time we're just going to see if they would like to send anything back to you right now. Again, any compassion or kindness or forgiveness, gratitude, anything like that. So then we're going to include that whole 10-year span from 5 years ago to 5 years in the future. I'm going to connect to the thread of Buddha nature that runs through, that can never not be there. I'm just going to zoom right out until it's almost the sense of, the full length of your life. Just feel it into the sense of the beauty, the absolute mystery, the strangeness, the joy, the tragedy, the hardship, the wonder of having a human lifespan. In this universe where, billions of others have had these human lifespans and billions of other life forms and cosmic forces and all of this stuff kind of swirling around. And then in the middle of that, you have this lifespan. And you can either, stay with that image or just let it dissolve out into the mystery and be present with everything that is here for you right now. And I'm going to ask you a question, and the invitation is just to listen really deeply and see if the universe, God, Buddha nature, the mystery, however you conceive of it, has something that it would like to, show you or share with you or reveal to you, a little universe poem about something that is meaningful. And the question is, what is your purpose? What is your purpose? And it could be something very specific, it could be something very vague and abstract. It could also be a deep, resounding, I don't know, that has a very strong mystical quality to it, not knowing. Just allowing whatever's present in your experience to be there. And then letting go of any sense of, your purpose, your your individual being and just feeling into that collective, that huge collective, mysterious explosion of life that we're all a part of, that we're always embedded in. Noticing what that feels like. So, yeah, like I shared, it's almost like, to me, it's almost like this big, timeless, primordial, psychedelic Buddha field. That's just the thing that is the sort of substrate in between. But it could easily be just a more naturalist, scientific perspective of a universe that's here, that we're all one piece of. Or it could be a kind of bodhicitta, heart-based Christ consciousness field, or whatever that bigger thing is, that has a sense of meaning and purpose in it. Just noticing how that feels to you and finding a connection to it. And we'll sit for 3 more minutes in silence. And you can stay with whatever feels most meaningful in this moment. And so before we go to Q&A, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what a practice of mysticism can look like. And so, it's very much built on these other practices that you do. Any other practices will kind of feed the depth sensitivity that you're able to be intimately with experience. But on top of that, there's a couple of things. So one is like finding a way to express this. So really kind of like, finding that connection to the depths of your being, feeling your Buddha nature, feeling yourself as an expression of the universe, and then being like, oh, what wants to emerge from that? So, like poetry and art are a really nice version of this. And you don't have to be a poet. You can do bad art and bad poetry and just let things flow and just let yourself express the thing that feels alive when you're in touch with the depths of your being. It could be writing, it could be work, even, I know people who have even very technical work, but see it as an expression of care for other beings and the universe, and just how you show up in that connection could be part of the expression of the deepest part of your being. Could be relationships, so romantic, friendships, work, whatever. It's kind of like showing up in a way that is the depths of your being. It could be play, anything that has a sense of, oh, I'm connected to something, this part of me in the depths of my being, and how can I be an expression of this thing? Just finding ways to do that, and finding ways to do that, to deepen in that, to practice, to find more full ways to be your expression of it. So that's kind of like one aspect. And then the other aspect is this more sort of receptive mode, where it's like allowing the universe to speak to you, allowing these things to come in, to have that sort of like sensitivity where, you're open to this mystical part of experience. So for that to open up, it's really important that you feel safe and that there's no kind of like major pressures on you. So there's a sense of like, leaving free time for some exploration, where, I don't know, maybe on a Saturday afternoon, you just say, okay, I'm just going to like wander around and receive where it wants to take me and what it wants to do. And like, oh, what do I notice? What am I drawn towards? What's my Eros? What's my kind of like, what's the like underlying subtle feeling that I get from just being in the world? And how does the world sort of like sing to me? What's its symphony when I'm kind of just, my only purpose is to just be in the world and sort of receive its symphony. Giving yourself free time, either, like I say, a block of time to really go and explore and do something. I often go into nature for this. It's like, just really, if I need some like deep connection time, it's like getting out in nature, and that just gives me the sense of like silence and openness to really receive the world. But it could be anything, or just putting like 5 minutes in your day of something where you think, oh, I'm just gonna like see what the world wants to communicate in some way. And then with that you can obviously add sort of like like divination stuff and tarot and different ways in which you're kind of inviting more of a mode of communication. But I think that really just simple, open, receptive, allowing the universe to come to you is kind of the core of it. I think that's all I wanted to share. So we can do questions or reports or shares or anything that comes up.
I noticed a couple of times as you were talking about sensing in deeply, you kind of gestured here.
Mm-hmm.
Of core. And I was curious about that. I wonder if is there a thing there for
Mhm.
you?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, my motto is kind of body, heart, mind, soul. So it's almost like there's a sense of a sort of like, a midline that goes all the way through. And I'm sort of like the whole thing, when I'm talking about mysticism, it's kind of like the whole thing sort of like open and present, and there's free flow, nothing's sort of majorly blocked. But the sort of really deep, when I feel into that deep, sensitive, receptive, like connection of the deepest part of me is connecting to the sort of like, the intimacy of just experience. It's almost like a tiny, like black thing that's almost like the core of existence or something. Kind of like a little seed or that has, just a sense of resonance. Is almost like its essence. And that then sort of spreads out to this sort of midline or full expansive thing, but there's something in there that's really at the core of it for me.
So thanks, Rosa. Thanks for the series. I enjoyed all of it. And my question is, I was kind of tempted to make a comparison between IFS and relating to different parts, in the sense of being there being this whole self, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to be too presumptuous. I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether that's a reasonable comparison to make. And is that the similar mindset that you have with regards to relating to these different parts of ourselves? But it seems a little bit, there's something different about this because it's body, mind, heart, and soul, which I don't know if I can draw them down to parts,
Mm-hmm.
Because they feel kind of almost like wholes in themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I think the IFS parts and self model is really nice for that sense of self. Yeah, it feels very kind of like true selfie. I've had lots of people compare it to Buddha nature, or sort of like that sense of wholeness and the sort of heart states that it's almost an expression of. And then we kind of have these endless different parts that aren't a fixed self. I really like that analogy. I think it works very well. With body, heart, mind, and soul, it's almost more like it's not really lenses, but that's kind of the closest analogy, where it's almost like the body, when you feel experience through the body, it feels one way. It's like this very kind of direct, felt, energetic thing. And even kind of thoughts, even sight, even are just an expression of energy. And then when you look through the mind, it's almost like everything is something that you're aware of. So even your body, you're just sort of aware of different parts of it at different times. And so it's almost kind of like, when you sort of like step into each one, they afford a different way of being. But the reality is that it's always a kind of symphony of the four that are coming together in each moment. But it's just helpful to be able to kind of feel those different bits. And then, that sense of some kind of like self, which I would call Buddha nature, as a kind of like, it doesn't have a fixed thing that it is. It's more just like this expression of these sort of, wholehearted qualities.
Yeah, I was curious about what the through line was.
And
I think you just said that, the sense of being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's like the sense of being, the sense of kind of like alignment of that all the parts. So for example, like in a lot of modern world, there's kind of splits between like the head and the mind, the heart and the mind, or like things, and it's just having that sense of like, oh, all these aspects are kind of welcome, can be sensed, are present. Yeah.
Hi, Rosa. Thanks for teaching. I really resonated with the kind of companionship theme that you were kind of touching on, but I was just wondering if you could expand on it. Maybe two kind of things come to mind. One is companionship in a kind of non-dual framework, and how you kind of reconcile those, or how you, I don't want to say conceptualize because I don't want it to turn into a conceptual thing, but just as like kind of a model maybe. And then also just if you have any tips for cultivating that, or practices, or just ways of relating to practice.
Yeah. Yes. I'm trying to think about this. It's like, so from a non-dual perspective, it's, there's a very kind of deep non-duality, which is that experience doesn't exist without an experiencer. And so it's almost kind of like if all the humans weren't here in the universe would have a very different experience. It's like we're the expression of its intelligence in a way. And it's almost like the way in which, it's like a kind of co-created non-duality rather than a oneness. And so, when I'm walking around with my connection to the universe and my sense of the divine and Buddha nature, it's like that's being created because of my unique experiences. And I'm like in relationship with this thing that is outside of me and bigger than me, but it emerges in that way because of my unique being. And that will be different for each person, will have their kind of like unique expression of that thing. And the non-dual part is kind of recognizing that sort of dynamic interplay between those two. Does that make sense for that part of the question?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's a very tricky kind of thing to parse, but that it's like non-dual, but it's also larger, kind of, is maybe what I'm hearing you say. That like kind of you, but also more than you. So you're relating to that part that's kind of more, is the sense of companionship maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so exactly, it's like there's something that's bigger than you, and there's you. And the experience of what that experience is non-dual, but there is something that's you and bigger than you, whatever you relate to those things are as. Even from a scientific perspective, it's like you and the universe. And then the companionship bit, I think, in a way, the opposite of mysticism is almost kind of like, there's almost like two ends of the spectrum. One's a kind of self-importance of like, oh, I'm the most important thing here. And then another part is sort of like being in a cold and uncaring universe. It's almost like the sense of, oh, I'm alone and kind of like lost. And mysticism, it's almost like that sort of like connection and surrender to something that's bigger. So you kind of, that self-importance can loosen. And then also a kind of, building of the trust that that thing is in some way kind of like benevolent, meaningful, beautiful. And I think that the things that will help you feel that are the same as the things that help you feel that in relationship with others. So it's almost like heart practices. I always think like jhana and heart practices are two of the best things, because if you can feel nice in your body, there's a sense that being in the universe is a nice experience. And equally, if you can kind of like feel positive sense of like, well-being, care, compassion towards other beings, that also relates to kind of this universe, and you're sort of like both giving and receiving, that opening that channel for more giving and receiving. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's
Cool.
nice. Thank you.
Any other reports or questions or no? Cool. Okay. So I just had a couple of quick things. Lots of people have come up and asked me about developing an imaginal practice. I'm going to send out an email to everyone with some resources. So there's a page on my website, rosalewis.co.uk, with lots of imaginal practice stuff. My friend River Kenner has got a bunch of courses on imaginal practice. Robber Bay's Soul Making is really good for developing an imaginal practice. And also one of the simplest things you can do to develop imaginal practice is listen to music. So that sense of the receiving and the kind of all of the things we talked about, like put on a good playlist and just let yourself be with the energy and the imagination. So I'll put all that in an email to everyone who's come. And I also wanted to say that that sense of the finding with the mysticism, finding a way to express it and also being in that receptive mode, just like the alembic as a place is a very cool place to have as a resource to, if you're like exploring your mystical spark, because there's a whole ton of complementary practices. There's a whole ton of like interesting events, cool people. So like use this as a resource and see if you can relate to it as a kind of like, oh, if I feel into like the depths of my being and connecting to this thing that's bigger than me, like where do I end up at the Alembic? What events do I go to? Who do I end up talking to? Kind of like just notice that you can feel that connection to mysticism while you're here. Cool. Yeah, that is all from me. Thank you so much. It's been a real joy to teach and really appreciate everyone practicing together. Thank you.